So, I'm gonna wait until a couple minutes after I started the stream to give you guys the reasoning as to what's going on, and obviously this situation with whatever I did with the Emperor and the Imperium. Honestly, it's just not that interesting. It's not the fact that the Imperium itself was boring, no, but this needs to be said. I was talking with my editor. And obviously, there was something that was said, and it just kept giving me a thought. What would happen if I based a universe in the 1700s and made it go all the way to the 1900s? Basically, kind of replay history, but on a different planet, different, kind of like a different universe, and best of all, a different tone. Basically, everything that's in their universe is happening because of technological developments of their time and vice versa. But I'm not going to actually tell you much other than that. But all I'm going to say is the starting year for this universe is 1780. This universe is just honestly, it really baffles me. But at the same time, it's an interesting topic because of how I want to take this universe. That to me is the most interesting part. It's like I want to take this universe and I want to change things. I'll have to explain it better when I start the discussion for it, but I'm going to let a couple people. This obviously needs to be told, but I will actually tell you the story of how this even came to be before I tell you what this is. But what I'm trying to say is my editor and we were doing some random shit talking and, well, basically being us. And he had said something that really made me think. I've always done I've always done things in the future on another world, always ahead of our time. You know what I mean? Always in front. But he says I've not done a single one that has something like historical value, like anything. He says I've never done a single one that's in muskets. I've never done one that's like Civil War era. I've never done any of that before. So I was thinking. So I really thought to myself, and I said, he's right. I've not done a single one, not a single, not even the one that was closest to it, which was literally modern day Earth during a nuclear apocalypse. That is the closest I've been to this. So I was kind of wondering, how would this work? So I started thinking through it and I started getting through everything and I realized, oh my gosh, this is actually possible with everything I have and with everything else that can be brought in. So as of right now, we've got a lot of cool things that need to get done, but I'll say this. The series is, as you could probably guess, an alternate universe, but here's the catch. This universe starts in 1780, and as it's going to reach its modern day in between 1900 to 1910. And the reasoning why I want it to reach there and stay there for a good amount of time is because that is modern day. That would be the modern day equivalent to their universe. And in 1780, the Italian Revolutionary War begins. And it's going. My goal is to get it from 1780 to 1787, a 7-year long a conflict that lasts 7 years, and that eventually gives one thing: Selby's independence. Obviously, this is their war for independence, but after this moment, there's not going to be a whole lot of other conflicts that they fight. However, I will give war notice to a conflict that occurs in 1792, basically just against pirates. But that's what they're kind of trying. They're trying to build up their forces, trying to build up everything that they've gained after this conflict. So now that Zelbia has finally gained its independence, how would it respond to the world stage? Well, after this point, in 1784, the in 1794, the Umar Empire collapses because it no longer has its resources from Zelbia. It no longer has resources to provide for itself nor its civilians, and it collapses. Here's the key kicker, though. In 1795, here's a pretty good list of events that I want to occur. Zelbia's navy and just overall spending for its military will increase at that year because the world is becoming less safe, but it's also going to put more money in its infrastructure, basically start to build itself while the whole world is basically, how do I say this? Basically, while the world's in chaos, they just lay back and say, we're not going to do a thing. Now, I will also say this. There probably will be a pretty big time skip from 1795 to 1845. And the reason why I'm doing that, a 50-year jump, is simple. There's no what could happen in those 50 years? There's going to be a bunch of chaos, but there's not going to be major war. And then, after 1847, a new nation appears that I don't know the name of yet, but I will make it. And my editor can possibly give me examples. And he also is the one that creates some of the flags. So if you actually do like some of the flag designs when you read the books, please check out his channel. And most importantly, check out the Discord channel, because that is also one that has not only all the flags, but you get to learn some of the lore that's added with it. And yes, if you join the server and you give me a good enough idea, I might make it into lore, and I will give you a shout out if that's the case. Meaning is, yes, you can determine everything in this story, or even valid major points. That's what I'm trying to say. But in 1847, this new nation's created and immediately erupts and distributes the balance of power unevenly. Now, it's easily able to tilt this new power gap that it has towards itself. However, in 1849, a new nation appears, and it is even bigger. It is presumed to be even bigger than Zelbia. So this nation is not only territorially larger, it likely will also have a larger population by reasonable dispute. However, as you can probably guess, most of these people and their population will starve. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what good is having people if you can't feed them? And here's where everything becomes completely insane. In 1851, it's the beginning of their First World War. This is a war that will use muskets, but this is the war that will end the use of muskets. Yeah, this is going to be the war that ends the use of muskets. Horses will still be used, but the First World War, I'm trying to make it, is to go from 1851 to 1859. The first one. Oh, that's the first one. This after this, between 1860 and about, I'd say, 1872, is the interwar period. This is going to be where all the important rebuilding and reviving, and this is where Zelbia begins to learn how to build skyscrapers. And this is where everything turns on its head. In the interwar period, the Zelbian military and population will not only be better off on average, but at this point, they will also be some of the tallest people in the world. Because, simple, it's basic economic science. The more money someone has, the better off their lifestyle. The better off their lifestyle, the healthier they are. The healthier they are, likely the taller they will grow, and the more healthy weight they can add on. It's just basic science and arithmetic. But after the interwar period between 1873 and 1885, this is the beginning of their version of modern combat. The Second World War goes from 1873 to 1885. The Second World War will end in the same type of thing, that this new nation that was created in 1847 would now lose both world wars against the world coalition against them, which is completely new. So now what happens? Now what happens? Because there's no major conflict now. And for the next 15, 20 years, there's not going to be any. Or well, not even close, right? Wrong. See, here's where begins new tensions. In 1891, Zelbia and Judea, obviously the Japan of the universe, begins to have heavy tensions. And here is where everything comes into fray. 1891 is when these tensions start to rise and rise and rise. And they begin to rise faster every single year due to, well, both nations. What do both nations want? Powerful navies. What do they want to do? Control their trade. But what happens when both of their trade interlocks with one another? One person can only control the trade. Two people cannot. So, what happens now? Well, in 1894, a major event in the world will occur. The first ever use of incendiary weapons in combat. Judean forces would likely be the first to use them, but not too long after, Zelbia would likely introduce them in their military and try to create small grenades with them. Now, obviously, the First and Second World Wars are not going to be the same as ours in our reality. Theirs, our first one was with muskets and horses and armored horses. The second one is where they have prototypes of armored cars, prototypes of rifles, actual rifles that we know of, like semi-autos, bolt actions. And this is where all the development of weapons comes into play, because now all these major weapons, all these inventions that we know of are now coming into fray. And here's where everything almost ends for their universe in terms of their modern society. In 1897, Judea had ultimately signed a non-aggression pact with a new nation that had just appeared. And because of it, between 1895 and 1899 is a civil war that will enact the big, very, very big nation, which is now allied with Judea. That big nation will turn communist and eventually creates the 1900. And when 1900 hit, they have the first Red Scare. And here's where everything comes into play. From 1700, keep in mind, from 1700 all the way down here, all these major events have occurred. And now, and you could probably guess, Zelbia is building up military personnel. Judea is beginning to develop their military forces. This new nation has a non-aggression pact with an enemy of Zelbia. And now many of the old allies of Zelbia are coming in to quarantine that one new nation because it's communist. Basically, the world is basically, how do I say this? It's on a head course collision for a third world war or a potential global conflict that might not actually be a world war. It doesn't matter if it is or not. It's going to be a major conflict that is going to occur between the years of 1900 and 1910. Between these years, either the beginning of this conflict or the entire conflict itself will begin and end. Now, it's probably going to begin, but it won't end in that decade. But what I'm trying to say is, I've thought this universe out quite a bit, and I'm actually really excited to see how this goes. I'm really excited. You could probably tell I'm a little excited. See, the other one, I was really happy to do the Imperium because it was something new, but at the same time, it wasn't really. It wasn't actually new. This is new. So this is supremely more interesting. Not only that, but there's events that can happen and events that take slow enough time to where you can actually look at the events and say, so this is what's going to happen. This could happen. That could happen. And then when you eventually get proven right, you're like, I knew this would happen. But that's the cool thing, is that sometimes you'll be wrong. I might take it one way, but then it goes completely the opposite direction. And I always find ways to explain my thought process. So, as I said, this has got the same energy for me. This has the same energy for when I first started the book writing series. Now, obviously, there has to be and this is what I'm trying to say, is that the war that will birth the Zelbian Federal Republic will also be the same one that begins the modern route of the world. Because in their timeline, they haven't built computer chips just yet, but because they've built radios already, they've already built all that. That means the first ever iteration of radios will likely be used in combat, which is actually kind of surprising, but at the same time, it's realistic. Most of our inventions are made from warfare. And for those that don't believe me, where did tanks come from? Where did armored vehicles come from? Where did our cars come from? All designs that were at one point wanted to be used for warfare. Even planes came from warfare. Now, obviously, the idea of the first plane was by the brothers from Ohio, obviously, the Flight Brothers. Obviously, however, the first ever iteration of a plane used, comparison to the first design of a plane, that's the key difference here. Planes may be designed, but they were ultimately used in warfare. Gee, quite an interesting prospect. But what I'm trying to say is their world is not different, not that different from other worlds. And to me, this is the cool thing, because this is different. This is completely different. And I was kind of surprised at how this would work. You know what I'm saying? But I'm glad that I get to do this, because this is a universe where most people are going to be like, oh, how would this work? Or how could this be a thing? But now you get a decent description of what would happen. So you can clearly see the interwar period would be a time of right here between 1873 and 1885. Between that and 1860, 1872, 1860 to 1872 is the interwar period. And that's where going to be all the major developments for vehicles and military equipment will come into fray. And this is the main reasoning as to why their universe is going to be really thought out. And I'm going to use this video, and if I somehow forget, I now have everything that I want here. So if I don't know what to do, I just come back to this live stream. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to say, is that meanwhile, when the modern world comes into fray in the 1900s, there's going to be a Red Scare, rising tensions in the world, potentially another world conflict. and someone is born, someone's going to be born in a certain timeline, and he's going to be 16 by 1903. And so, obviously, what's going to happen now, right? How will this, or will he be 16 or 18? I don't know. I'm going to wait and see how this works and how this will go before I say anything about the age of the person coming in. However, the 1900s will likely be an era of mainly peace and prosperity, even though there is the looming threat of potential global conflict, and it looks like there's going to be a clash. However, will there? That's the key thing. It's like the Judean Empire is already beginning to collapse at this time, and the communist nation is already having trouble keeping its citizens in check. So who knows? Will there be a conflict there? Probably not. But if there would be, it would definitely be the worst one yet. Because now there are fully automatic rifles, and from what I've learned, there are also going to be very powerful weaponry. Now, I'm not all too certain if the weapons of choice for their militaries are going to be important, but the Zelbians by 1900 will likely use a 6.8 by 54 millimeter cartridge for their rifles and for their infantry. There's a reason why they are going to be using that type of cartridge. And it's pretty simple. The cartridge gives increasing velocity and allows the bullet to go through and just completely screw up anything inside your body. Now, I will also say there will likely be soldiers with physical armor, meaning is they will have metal plates similar to sappy plates, but they're not going to be as thick. But even then, even if they aren't as thick, they're going to be able to stop bullets. No problemo. Even steel 100 years ago would be able to stop anything up to a 9 millimeter. Even a 9 mil, like our modern version of 9 mil, would not go through a fourth of an inch of steel. Now, granted, it depends on the type of steel, how it's made, a lot of other factors. But if that steel is made to practically withstand bullets, and even a 9 mil would not go through it. And most militaries will either have a pistol caliber in a and these are the three main pistol caliber rounds. The 6.35, which is basically 25 caliber, 9 millimeter, or a 45. And that is what the 45 is what is being used in the Zelbian military at that time. And police also use that caliber. Why? Because you only have to hit the enemy once, and once you hit them once, they will go down. That's the key thing, is that they will go down. They will not fight you back. They will go down. But what I'm trying to say is as I'm trying to say, the handguns are going to be important, but generally speaking, the militaries of the world at that point are probably going to be advanced enough to where there's no need to fight the conflicts that they won't want to fight anymore. There's no need. However, there will still be a handful of conflicts they'll want to fight. Now, that doesn't mean that these conflicts are good. No, they're not. But there are a few that they just have to fight, regardless of military technology. But as you could probably tell, I'm really excited to get this idea. I'm very excited to get this. And for those that are curious about the dimensions of the bullets, you've got you can probably tell the very first one right here is the 25 cal. The 9x21 is a normal 9 millimeter bullet for them, and as you can probably tell, their 45 is very similar to ours. It's because the bullet is based off of 45 ACP. Why? What are you gonna do to something when it comes to, like, what is something gonna do to you? When you pull out a 45, what is it gonna do to you? What is anything else gonna do to you? Because the 45 caliber round is gonna really rock your shit. It's gonna really rock you. And from what I've seen, even a 45 at a certain range can punch right through steel. I'm actually shocked that there are videos of 45 punching through steel, and I'm surprised. Now, there's a chance of it, but even if it doesn't punch through steel, let's say that fact, all that force is going to go right into the steel and knock you over. It literally does not matter if that armor blocks that bullet or not. It does not matter. It will knock you to the ground regardless. Now, the 6.35 by 18 is more, it's probably going to be more useful for stealth operations rather than actual usage. You know what I mean? It would likely also be the thing. 9mm is probably in the middle. It's in the middle. So it's not too big, but it's not too little. And it's just at that point where a bullet of that size and a bullet of that caliber works extremely well in self-defense and even offensive fights. But many of the people in the Zombie military are going to choose 45 over the 9mm. Why? Because it takes like 3 or 4 shots for 9mm usually to take someone out. Now, with a 45, you only got to get them once. Also, I also see someone up here. Who's this? New phone? Who dis? New phone? Who dis? Andrew Tate. Ah, yes. Andrew Tate. You missed my explanation there. You missed my explanation, editor. Come on, man. But yeah, you can easily see if you scroll. I don't know. Yeah, I know you arrived late. I don't know if you could see the chat right now. What happened? What was said before? But can you actually see what was said before? All the things. Bruh. Okay. See. Okay. It's going to be a lot to re-explain, but I will say this: the idea that me and you had about this new universe, it's honestly really shocking. And this is the first time I've done anything somewhat historical, even if from another universe. Like, this is the first time I've done anything similar to historical. So I'm actually very curious to see how this will go. And if I'm also correct, you created the main state of Tuscany, right? You created Tuscany. Not only did he help create Tuscany, he creates most of the good flags. Yeah, it's kind of like it's the pre-colonial era. It's closing in on Victoria. It's close to post-colonial. Yeah, Tuscany. Yeah, you created that state. And post-colonial, most of it is like 1800 or somewhere around that date. It's really, 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 really close to where the Revolutionary War will begin and end. And after the colonial will begin the Victorian era, which, similar to their Victorian era, will last between oh, it'll actually post 1800 to 1850 is the Victorian era. I gotta search up what is the I'm actually curious. What is the time period? The progressive era. Ah, okay. So basically, there's the Victorian era and the 1900s, the beginning of the 1900s. But for this world, it's actually gonna be between. Shut the fuck. Shut up. Shut up. You. Shut up, dude. No, we're not doing this bullshit. We are not doing this bullshit. But the progressive era for them is going to be between 1860 to 1910. Basically, this is going to be the really big time loop where they have all the basically all of that those 50 years are going to be the beginning and the full progressive time loop. Technically, it should be after this. You know, I used to have a Quandale Dingle Tupper. I used to have a Quandale Dingle Tupper, but we're not going to talk about that. But, oh yeah, by the way, Matthew, I got to ask you a question. Duscany. Uh, I got to ask you a question about Duscany. And I want you to put the capital of Duscany in the chat. I want you to put it's a city that is the capital of Duscany, but I also want to ask you another question. There are, in the future, there are going to be three main pistol calibers that for the progressive era. I need you to pick which one that you're gonna want to pick for the 1900s, because when the 1900s come around, you can add in a character, and it's going to be important, and he's going to be important to wherever he's from. Okay, and the reason why. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. Actually, Matthew, this is going to be kind of interesting because the world wars are going to be fought in the 1850s to 1880s. Well, 1850s through the 1880s. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, 9mm. You know what? Yeah. I can't even be mad at you for choosing that option. That's a pretty good option because their 9mm is actually 9x21, so it's going to have a slight bit more kinetic energy. So you have chosen a pretty damn good object. Pretty good, if I must say. But what I'm trying to say is the reason why I'm saying this is because of the inevitable future war that will be coming in the 1900s. But the First World War happens in the 1850s, mid 1850s. And scrolling up here for I can see, it ends at the almost, goes from 1851 to 1859. Basically, it is the entire decade. That entire decade is nothing but conflict. The Second World War is going to last a long time. This one's going to be bad. Because unlike the first one, which used only muskets, unlike the first one, which did use trench warfare, but there were no tanks and there were only horses and armored horses. And basically, what would happen if Victorian era world war that occurred in the Victorian era? Basically that. And then you've got World War II, that basically is World War I, but on some extensive steroids. So you've got trench warfare, mustard gas, and as you could probably guess, the first iteration of armored vehicles, and eventually, by the 1890s, the first iteration of a tank. Yes. Tanks a lot. But in the 1900s is when everything's going to be coming differently. But I've said the idea for the universe, I've even set cornerstone for the lore of said universe. I'm really excited to get this. I'm legitimately excited to start this universe. I'm honestly very happy that this universe is coming into fruition because I can use some historical knowledge in this. So it's going to be awesome. And for them, they're like, for us, our modern society is into the 2000s. For them, it's it's the end of the 1890s and beginning of the 1900s. Even though there are no personal cell phones and all that, there will still be phones that are able to be used to connect people across the planet. So things are a little different on their world, and it's because of the size of the world, the resources of the world, and just how many people are capable of researching it. POV, you're learning history in Zelbia. That is legitimately hilarious because it's like, oh, but the everything as I've said in this video will be put into the universe, but it's the 1900s that I want to keep completely silent because those are the time. That's the timeline that I want to keep a normalcy. You know what I mean? I want to keep it to a normalcy degree. The 1900s are going to be mainly peaceful, mainly. There will be some scattered conflicts, but there won't be anything serious. But I kind of want to build up all the history to the modern World War. Well, not the modern World War, but the modern world in their universe, which is the 1900s. I'm super excited for this. But you've got anything else to say, editor? Anything at all? Yeah. Okay. Oh, so yeah, I was actually saying that there's going to be a nation bigger than Zelbia. Yeah, we can use the Empire of Rusvakia. 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 Hey, bleh, bleh, suka bleh. Yeah, I actually believe that's going to be a good idea for the Empire Rusvakia. Rusvakia. Da, Rusvakia. But I want to make that country communist. Hey, God. I'm gonna try to make them communists. So technically, it's gonna be the Red Scare in the 1900s because of the communists. But yeah, but other than that, if you've got anything else to say it right now because this will be the end of the stream, and I will let everybody know how this is going by Friday. So that's what I'm gonna try to do on Friday is tell you how this is working and will there actually be a future for the universe or not. Oh God, not a USRR. The USRR. Yeah, we're gonna do that. The USRR is gonna exist. The USRR. How about you USRR these nuts? Will not. You imagine you say that to somebody. How about you USRR these nuts? No. Oh no. Oh God. But I also have the light machine gun for the Zelbians. I have the Hallmark semi-auto rifle for the military. I even have military handgun. So everything's all set. And the only thing uh, I even made the fighter plane for, and because of how technology is advancing really well in their universe, they don't use biplanes in the 1900s. They use World War II style. fighter jets. World War II with the propellers and the machine guns. Except for the Zelbians decided that they wanted a ridiculously overpowered aircraft that can pretty much do everything. Yeah, and if I'm also correct, in World War II, they were able to equip rockets on fighters. So guess which fighter is going to be able to equip rockets? Yes, rockets, bombs. Uh, Basically, this is the dawn of a fighter bomber. Yes, a fighter bomber. Bam! So they've got heavy armored troop transports. They've got a battle tank. They've got even got their infrastructure. Like, look, I think I've sent you the infrastructure. Either that or I've sent it in. But that's funny thing is that, and they've got World War II style warships. So they've got aircraft carriers. They've got destroyers, cruisers, battleships, battle cruisers, all those cool things. So they got all those. So basically, elements of World War One, the Progressive Era, World War Two, and even some parts of the Cold War are intervened in this too. So that's what I'm trying to say is that this is going to be quite a universe to live in. Frigates and corvettes, well, especially for Tuscany. Tuscany still has its empire up until just around 1880. That's when they lose a good portion of their empire. And by 1900, every empire that has existed before that point has fallen. So even some of the more important empires have just released their territories. But I will also say this, the world population during the 1780s is actually huge. And there's a reason why it's this big. 2 billion. How on earth, why would the population be that big, you may ask? Because in our timeline, there were only a couple 100 million people. How come there's 2 billion people? Well, I have an explanation for you. Two things occurred. The economic growth of the planet between 1700 and 1750, and the second reason, the lack of warfare. Those 50 years saw minimal warfare, minimal amounts of people dying due to diseases spread mainly by wars and immigration. And as a result, the population exploded in those 50 years. But they never went above 2 billion. That was until 1810 hit. All of a sudden, the population went from, in 10 years, from 2 billion to 2.25 billion in 10 years. But in the next 10 years, it goes from that to 2.6 billion. Bam. Because medicine and warfare has stopped for the last 50 next years. The next 50 years have no warfare, meaning is from that all the way to 1855, where the First World War begins, the world population is approximately 3.5 billion. That is over half of what it would be in the 1900s. And then from that point, both world wars sparked immense population growth, including the second one, especially that one. By the end of both wars, the population in 1890 was 5 billion people. 1900, it ranges from 6.1 to 6.5 billion. Okay, type, go to the Discord channel, go to the Discord general chat and type all these ideas you have, and I will see if I can make them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that their world is different from ours, and it's because of how their world. Yeah, it's because of how our world coincides with theirs. And they did two, and as I said, two major things happened. They found a way to cure they found a way to cure viruses, a way to create actual medicine that works, and number two, economic growth beyond anyone's possibility up until the progressive era, which it completely exploded. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that their world is not the same as ours, but it does also be. But you're also going to understand they have more land mass, they have more potential to hold people. Their maximum population they could hold is probably around 15.5 billion people. So seeing that there's that many people, it doesn't actually mean a whole bunch. That's like 40% of the actual population. So it's not like it's gonna. Yeah. But as I say, however, due to how the universe is, it might not even reach over 7 billion because, again, as I said, it's going to be part of the universe where it's going to be around the 1900s where things start to slow down a bit. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be a potential modern era for their universe, but there's no real reason to add a modern part of the universe. It's better just to stay in the 1900s. But that's what I'm trying to say is this universe has a lot of hidden potential. And I think this right here, mixed with everything and all of the historical events that will occur throughout the universe's history, I think this is going to be one of the best ones I've done yet. I'm ready to do this, and I'm ready to start as soon as right now up until whenever it's completed. But once I reach the 1900s is when things are going to, as I said, slow down. Things are going to start completely slowing down, and this is where the main universe is going to be set because I want it to be made in the progressive era. So I'm really excited for this. I'm actually really excited. And yeah, see, even you're excited because this is the first time I've done one that isn't a modern era type of world. This isn't a modern era world. This is something different. And I plan on adding Udea as a pretty important aspect of the progressive era because during this time, sure, they're going to have rising tensions with the Zelbians, but at the same time, they're also being influenced by the Zelbians. So it's kind of like if they attack or fight the Zelbians, their nation can't modernize. So who knows what'll happen? Who knows? That's why the 1900s were told in their history books as Udea. Udea, as I said, Udea is like Japan. It's basically a similar state to Japan. But there will be Udea will be affected during one of the world wars. So Udea will be um, it will be affected in the world wars greatly. But it will actually be an ally to Zelbia both times. So no, we're not going to be fighting Udea. No, we're actually going to be fighting with them both times, not against them. So they're gonna be the ultimate Giga Chads. Okay, they're the Giga Chads of the World Wars. But after the World Wars, they're pretty much just like, what do we do now? We're the only major power in the world with a navy of this. No, Syria. I don't know. I don't know if I should add Syria and Barcelona. I don't think we should. I think Judea and Zelbia are the two main nations that are going to be kept. But every other one is going to be brand new, is going to be brand spanking new, and it will be a different universe. That's what I would say. But this universe is going to be more fun because there are many different types of aspects involved. God, not another one. Not another war. Well, as I said, this is going to be an idea. I really, really want this to be reality. I really do want this to be reality. So I'm really excited for this. Not only am I excited, I'm excited to see how naval warfare would change in this alternate universe. How would it start? How would it change? So I've got nothing else to say. And as I've said before, if you got anything else to say it now. If you don't, I will end this live stream here and begin the process of creating the universe. So if that's everything, I will be done here. Udea's like, whoa, what now? There'll be a war. Udea's, what? Zambia sinks ship. I said war. But I am so prepared to begin this. And the best part is, I have legitimate time to do these. I have many days to countlessly begin the chapters and begin the universe. So I'm really planning on fixing this universe into something beautiful. But as I've said before, this is going to be important. But I'm done. I don't know if you got anything left to say in terms of the lore or any of that. If you've got, but you got anything else to say about this? Anything at all? You say it right now, or forever hold the peace of the moment. I guess that you don't have anything else to say. I'm going to assume you have nothing else to say. But we are done here. I can finally begin working on this universe. I am really intrigued to see how this will work, but I'm curious to see how this will also go. So I'm ready for it. So I'm going to end the stream here. So I will see you when the first parts and the beginning and the end of the Revolutionary War will come into fray, along with the beginning of the First and Second World Wars. So this will be interesting, and I will see you all next stream.